After a dominating win last week, the Oklahoma Sooners are looking to follow that up with a win against the SMU Ponies. And we got to talk about it. We got to talk about, is there the potential for an upset? I know this thought has been floated around, but I don't think there is a cause for too much concerns for the University of Oklahoma. We're going to dive a little bit into the visitors that are going to be on campus this weekend and more. So you guys need to stay locked in, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, jump down in the comments below, and let me know what y'all's thoughts are. But Oklahoma is hosting the SMU this week in Norman at 5 o'clock. I believe the game's going to be on ESPN Plus. They don't do the pay-per-view games anymore. And Oklahoma actually had a really funny commercial for this, basically with Brandon Hall having Peyton Bowen come in and turn on ESPN Plus for him and get the game on because, well, got to help an old person out. So actually kind of funny there what Oklahoma did, because last year, you had some people have some issues. But enough of that. We got to talk about the game, and we got to talk about a prediction here, because Oklahoma last week, I think, surpassed a lot of people's expectations. You won the game 73-0. And although there were a few things you could pick at, like, hey, Oklahoma didn't get as many sacks as you would have thought that they would have had. Maybe you didn't see Stogner get as many catches as you would have wanted to see him get. Maybe you didn't see, I don't know, the penalties cleaned up as much as you thought they would have been, right? So you look at the game and go, there's a couple things Oklahoma could take away from there. And I want to say this. I want to start off by saying, yes, all of those things Oklahoma can improve on throughout this non-conference schedule going into the Texas game. Because I said it, Cincinnati's going to be a game where you don't want to overlook it, because, especially after what you saw last week where they beat up on Elon, they could be a team that could cause you some problems. But realistically, Oklahoma should be 5-0 before they play Texas. And depending on how Oklahoma looks, well, there's a good chance you're probably going to lose that game depending on how good Texas is. But let's all hope for the best. Fingers crossed that Oklahoma can pull through a win in the Red River rivalry this year. But I'm looking at this game, SMU, and I'm saying, well, right now you've got the spread at minus 14.5. The matchup predictor in ESPN is giving Oklahoma like an 89% chance to win. So, you really don't have a lot of concern for Oklahoma here. Now, if they go out here and they lose this game, you're probably going to be asking yourself, wait, is Oklahoma as good as we thought they were? But I'm looking at it here, pretty basic. Oklahoma should outperform and out-dominate SMU. Total yards just through one game, 642 versus 457. Oklahoma through the air was able to put up a little bit more than SMU, but when it comes to the rushing side of the ball, I feel like you're going to see SMU potentially have a more balanced attack there than Oklahoma. I feel like Oklahoma is going to be heavier on the passing throughout probably non-conference schedule. Then when you see them get into the conference schedule, that's when you'll probably see it balance out a little more. But Oklahoma's defense last week, absolutely suffocating. 208 yards allowed, only 48 rushing yards, which if you take away the quarterback being flushed out of the pocket and having to get 10 yards out of the scramble, it's really only 38 rushing yards from those backers. So you really like what you have seen from Oklahoma. It's going to be a hot game. So, you guys need to start hydrating now. But the over-under is at 68.5. I believe Oklahoma and SMU are probably going to top this number. And I'll go ahead and give you my prediction now. I think Oklahoma is probably going to win this game 45-14. I think SMU gets two scores at some level, whether that's two touchdowns or a touchdown and a field goal. But I'm going to say 45-14 for Oklahoma. You've gotten another really strong performance out of Dylan Gabriel, and you're going to see Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes absolutely go out here and put on a clinic through the ground. But we got to look at what we want to see out of the University of Oklahoma. And what I want to see out of Oklahoma in this game, I want to see Andrell Anthony and Jalil Farouk go out there and absolutely have themselves a field day. Now, we got to see a little bit of Andrell Anthony in the first game, which is exciting because this was a guy that Michigan fans were kind of upset to lose. Yeah, they were kind of upset to lose him. But you see here, Andre Anthony had 3 receptions for 66 yards. I believe his longest was 45 and his average was about 22. You saw Drake Stoops and Jaden Gibson and Gavin Freeman all get touchdowns. I don't believe you probably won't see Drake Stoops in this game. Hopefully not. Hopefully he gets recovered well, and then we have him towards conference play. But I'm sure you'll see a little bit out of Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson. They both looked good in that game, and it was really nice to see Nick Anderson get that long pass. I mean, he should have gotten a touchdown out of it, but you know how it goes sometimes. But I'm looking at the wide receiver core, and I'm saying Jalil Farouk and Andre Anthony. I want to see more out of those 2 wide receivers in this game. Obviously, when it comes to rushing, Javonte Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk. You want to see your 1A and your 1B go out there and dominate and look really good. And they should be able to do that behind this offensive line that just looked good last week. Now, I don't expect this is a game where you're going to see Jackson Arnold. Obviously, you got to see Jackson Arnold last week, 11 of 11, 114 yards, didn't miss a beat, right? And Dylan Gabriel, 19 of 22, 308 yards, did just as well. I believe you'll probably see Dylan Gabriel the whole game. I hope to see him maybe use his feet a little bit more, but we'll have to keep our eyes on it there. And so you look at it for Oklahoma, you know what you're going to get out of the defense. Going to be a Danny Stutzman. You're going to get Jaron Kanak. You'll get probably either, I'm hoping, a Sammy Omosigho. I really like him, or a Lewis Carter, or Phil Picciotti, or Shane Witter. Somebody's going to fill up that third linebacker spot. I want to see what Oklahoma has this year in terms of the 3-man front. I know that was something Oklahoma fans did not like last year, but I'm curious to see if they can roll that out this game, what that pressure looks like with Isaiah Coe or Dejon Terry and Jonah Laulu, and you've got the transfers and Bothroyd, and you have Trace Ford, and which it's funny that Trace Ford ends up transferring to Oklahoma. He should have always been at Oklahoma from the start, but we all know Tebow didn't like to recruit in-state kids, and Trace Ford ended up going to Oklahoma State. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how those guys can potentially run that 3-man front and then potentially get that applied pressure to the quarterback, which is probably one of the biggest keys to win this game. Preston Stone went last week 23 of 37 with a 62% completion percentage. So not like the best in the world, but it's like his first game. So as a starter, so you would expect that, you get a little bit of pressure on Preston Stone. You're probably going to keep him in that 60 to 65% completion percentage. You want to keep him probably in the low 60s or under right there. I wouldn't expect to see Preston Stone probably get more than 250 passing yards. I expect that this OU secondary is going to be able to clean up and keep Jordan Hudson at bay. Now, you might be saying, hey, well, Jordan Hudson sounds familiar. Well, that's because, he played for TCU and 14 receptions last year, 174 yards. 3 touchdowns. Yeah, that's why Jordan Hudson sounds familiar. But I believe the secondary is going to be able to keep Jordan Hudson at bay. You're not going to see Jordan Hudson go out there and just completely burn your secondary, maybe like you would have seen in the past. This Oklahoma secondary, I just believe, is really good. Now, you've heard some people try to hype up the return of the defensive tackle Corey Roberson to the University of Oklahoma, and I kind of just laugh because the dude didn't really play for Oklahoma, and we're hyping it up like he knows something about the BV defense, or he's going to be able to provide all this insight to SMU. Like, really, I mean, he might be able to give them an insight to what this atmosphere is going to be like in terms of from the fans, but it's not like this dude's going to come out here and just be a game world changer for SMU. So it's kind of funny that some people are trying to hype that up. Now, we saw the defensive line, like I said, they really hit well last week on the rushing attack. And although they didn't get as many sacks as people would have liked, I think Ethan Downs had the only sack of the game last week. You would really like to see them continue that success of suffocating the opposing team's rushing attack. So you got LJ Johnson Jr. and Jalen Knighton. Those are going to be the two guys that you really have to pay attention to. I don't believe Kamari Wheaton. I don't think we're going to see him. I think I heard somebody say he was injured or suspended or something. So I don't think we're going to see Kamari Wheaton in this game. But LJ Johnson Jr. and Jalen Knighton, those are the two guys that you really want to focus on. And you really want to say, okay, if we can shut them down, apply a little bit of pressure like we did last game to Preston Stone, even if you're not getting the sacks, because, really it's just a timing thing. You got to be able to beat those offensive linemen in the first 2.5 seconds to get to the quarterback, sometimes even faster, depending on just how good that quarterback is that you're playing. So LJ Johnson Jr., a guy that was at Texas A&M. I think in his career, he's had like 31 carries, not even a little over 100 yards, but he's had 2 touchdowns. So LJ Johnson Jr., I don't feel like is going to be just this world beater at the running back position that you're not going to be able to stop. But it's going to be interesting because Jalen Knighton from Miami, you really want to see Oklahoma just go out there and have a successful. I think if you can hold the SMU rushing attack under 100 yards, you're feeling good with that. You hold them under 250 pass yards, 250 or under 100 on the rushing side, you feel good. A total of 350 yards given up to an SMU team that's heading to the ACC, right? So for so long, we've talked about SMU being just that top echelon of non-Power 5 teams, like, that they could be in a Power 5 conference if they really wanted to. They're finally getting that chance, leaving the American Athletic Conference. So, really, SMU's had a good offense, and last year they had Tanner Mordecai, and I believe this game looks a lot different if they still had Tanner Mordecai in this team, because Tanner Mordecai is a really serviceable quarterback, but, they wanted to go with the redshirt sophomore and the future of their program and Preston Stone, which, that's understandable. Oklahoma's going to want to do the same thing next year with Jackson Arnold. So, again, I'm looking at a 45-14 win for Oklahoma. It's a 5 o'clock game. It's going to be hot. You probably won't see any cool down for the game until 7. I know I'm probably going to be in the sun the whole time. I sit in section 35, row 72, so I'm definitely not going to be beating the sun here. But we will have fun watching the game, and we will have fun enjoying Oklahoma potentially beat up on another opponent. I will say this: if Oklahoma walks out of this game keeping SMU scoreless, we might really need to reevaluate how we look at Oklahoma going forward for the rest of the season, because I've looked at Oklahoma's schedule, and, after last week and what you saw from some of the opponents that are on their schedule, like a TCU who just dropped a deuce to, Colorado. And not saying Colorado's bad, because, I've been talking up Colorado this whole year, but you lose to Coach Prime. You were just the college football playoff national championship runner-up, so now you got mollywopped in the national championship. But Oklahoma it looks like going to be their only ranked opponent on the schedule is going to be Texas. I don't know if Oklahoma State's going to be in the top 25. They didn't look that good against an FCS opponent. At Kansas will be interesting to see if Jalen Daniels and that team can get it together, but it didn't look like Jalen Daniels was playing last week, so it'd be curious to see when he's going to be able to return for them. And outside of that, up and down this schedule, it doesn't look like there's going to be really any teams that you're just like, they stand out to you. So, yeah, if they hold them to their shutout, we could be looking at the schedule and going, okay, that Texas win is going to decide whether you go undefeated or not. So, but kind of shifting gears a little bit and looking at some of the recruits that will be on campus, another good recruiting week. You're going to have a lot of these guys that are already committed to Oklahoma on campus. You're going to have Josh Isosa and Bergen Kaisar on their OVs. Andy Bass will be there. Michael Patterson McDonald will be there. Of course, they're local to the area, so you'd expect that they're going to be there. I would expect that you'll probably see a Kevin Sperry, a Jaden Nickens, and Elijah Thomas, and all of these guys. I expect you'll see them all year long because they're local to the area. They love OU, right? They don't have to travel very far. Now, I haven't confirmed with them if they're coming, but it's just, I kind of expect it, right? Xavier Robinson. And then I expect, if Kevin Sperry and these guys are showing up, they're probably bringing some of their Carl Albert teammates. But, we'll have to follow up on that later in the season and just kind of see how many times some of these kids actually end up making it up to Oklahoma. But in 2025, for the 2025 class, you've got 4-star safety Kobe Sellers coming on. This is a guy that we've been pretty high on in the class. You know, if you get him and Jonah Williams, you have a really nice safety class. 4-star linebacker Christian Thatcher. We've talked about him multiple times. I expect him in Oklahoma's class, and eventually we will get him on the podcast. We'll probably try to get him on after this game day experience because, you know, I like to get the recruits on either after an OV or after just an unofficial visit so that, you know, you guys as a fan, we can kind of get an idea of what these unofficial visits are kind of like, or just the official visits are like. You're going to have the 3-star defensive lineman Garrison Utley on campus. You have 2026 offensive lineman Drew Evers, 2026 running back Caden Jones. And guys, there's going to be more people that show up on campus. One of the ones that I'm watching really heavily this year is Michael Fasusi. He was not able to make it last week. That's the 5-star offensive lineman out of Louisville, Texas. But if you guys are familiar with this, you know Oklahoma has a 4-star commit in Jaden Hardy. And if Jaden Hardy shows up to Oklahoma, which I expect he'll show up to a couple games this year, you have to wonder, does he try to get Michael Fasusi to tag along? Remember, in that interview that we had with Michael Fasusi, he talked about how Jaden Hardy's been recruiting him to Oklahoma, trying to get him here. They're teammates. They play on the same team, just 1 year apart. So that's something that we'll want to keep our eyes on. Other recruits that you'll want to keep an eye on just to see if they show up. Nate Roberts, the 2024 4-star tight end. So we'll keep our eyes on it. You guys know I sit right above the recruits, so at some point I'll go down there, talk to them, we'll grab pictures, and then, you know, I'll give you guys my post-game thoughts about, you know, how I feel like they were interacting and, you know, hey, did they enjoy the game? So we'll talk about more of that later on. You guys will see that Sunday or Monday. But guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like, hit that subscribe button, jump down in the comments below and let me know what y'all's thoughts are. Give me your predictions for the Oklahoma versus SMU game. What do you guys think the score will be? What do you think Oklahoma really needs to focus on in this game, and what would you like to see them improve on the field?